Consider for a moment the power of a genuine connection, a friend, a trusted confidant. As humans, our very wiring craves it. When we lack connection, the emptiness can be profound, often leading to a pain. And when that said pain becomes unbearable, we seek relief, often turning to what we call medication. Interestingly, researchers have identified two main ways we medicate ourselves. The first is the conventional approach seen in Western medicine, using drugs as an external solution to internal struggles, an outside-in method. However, there's another dimension to this, the inside-out approach, characterized by maladaptive or dysfunctional behaviors, the things we do and say to numb our pain. What's fascinating is that our brains cannot distinguish between these two methods of pain relief. When faced with pain, some of us instinctively reach for pills or medications. Others, however, delve into what psychologists call the drama triangle. In this dynamic, individuals may assume the role of a victim, constantly complaining and seeking sympathy, feeling helpless, hopeless, and powerless. On the other end, some become persecutors, exhibiting bullying or gaslighting behaviors. Then there are those who take on the rescuer role, seeking validation and purpose through helping others, often, almost always, at the cost of genuine connection. But here's the crux. It doesn't have to be this way. True healing and fulfillment comes from authentic connections, not temporary fixes or roles in a dramatic narrative. Let's explore how we can break free from these patterns and cultivate meaningful relationships in retirement built on empathy, understanding, and genuine connection. Welcome to my podcast of How Not to Retire, a psychological approach of retiring healthy and wealthy, Episode 12, Communication Hazards. Greetings, I'm your host, Dr. Richard Himmer. As mentioned in previous segments and multiple times in this podcast, guilt tripping can have a detrimental effect on relationships in retirement, causing strain and discomfort for both parties involved, for all parties involved. I'm going to go over 5 examples that illustrate how guilt tripping can negatively impact the relationships. I'll give each one a title. The first one we're going to talk about is called the persistent widow. A retired widow constantly guilt trips her adult children into visiting her every weekend. This should sound familiar from previous podcasts. Even though the children have busy lives and families of their own, she frequently reminds them of her loneliness and sacrifices, making them feel obligated to spend time with her. As a result, her children begin to dread these visits, feeling resentful and emotionally drained, which ultimately damages their relationships with their mother. So what's the solution? The widow can focus on building a fulfilling life outside of her children's visits. She could pursue hobbies, join social clubs, or volunteer in the community. By engaging in activities that bring her joy and purpose, meaning she needs to know her purpose, which means she needs to know her identity, she can reduce her dependence, or what I'd call codependence, on her children for companionship. Additionally, open and honest communication with her children about their needs and boundaries can help establish a more balanced and sustainable relationship. You see, it's not just on the widow, it's also on the children. All right, number 2, the manipulative grandfather. A retired grandfather uses guilt as a tool to control his grandchildren's behavior. He often reminds them of the expensive gifts he has given them or the time he spent with them, implying that they owe him their obedience and loyalty. This manipulation creates an atmosphere of unease and distrust, causing the grandchildren to distance themselves from their grandfather emotionally. Now, before I go into the solution, let me just point out, I'm asking you just to reflect in the mirror for a moment. Does this sound like you? Because if it does, then we're going to go over the solutions. More often than not, you're going to think, oh, I know someone like that, or my loved one does this one. So just be mindful. Don't judge anyone. Don't judge yourself. Just be aware of the behavior. Oh yeah, I'm somewhat manipulative, or I do that. Now let's figure out a way not to do it. So here's the solution to the manipulative grandfather. Grandpa should probably recognize that using guilt and manipulation to control grandchildren is harmful. Instead, he could work on building genuine, loving relationships based on mutual trust and respect. And at the end of the podcast today, I'm going to give you a tool, a technique to do that. So Grandpa can express his love and appreciation for grandchildren without attaching conditions or expectations. By focusing on creating positive experiences and memories together, he can strengthen their bond without resorting to guilt tripping. And just so you know, it's a 10-to-1 ratio. So if Grandpa's been doing this for some years, it's going to require 10 positive experiences with the grandchildren to overcome one negative. So let's say in one visit, he really emphasizes how much he enjoys being with them without any kind of tie to it. And then if he just blows it at the end and says, it'd really be nice if you'd see me more often, all 10 of those comments that he did get wiped out with the one negative. So 10-to-1 ratio. Be mindful. Okay, our third illustration is called the martyr parents. A retired couple consistently guilt trips their adult children for not providing them with financial support, even though the children are struggling to make ends meet themselves. The parents remind their children of the sacrifices they made raising them, implying that the children are ungrateful and selfish. This behavior strains the parent-child relationship, causing the children to feel resentful and avoid honest communication with their parents about their own financial situation. What's the solution here? The retired couple should understand that their children's financial situations may differ from their own. Instead of guilt tripping, they can have an open and honest discussion. Notice how communication keeps coming involved in this. And they can talk about the finances and explore alternatives. This may involve downsizing some expenses, learning Finance 101, maybe getting some advice or finding ways to supplement the income. But notice it's a conversation. Therefore, the conversation's emotional intelligence seem to always be at the baseline of solutions. By approaching the situation with empathy and understanding, they can maintain a supportive relationship with their children without placing undue pressure on them. Why would a child ever come to a parent if all they are going to experience is guilt leveraging? Mom and Dad may never know what's going on because it's not safe space. All right, number 4, the bitter retiree. A retired individual harbors bitterness towards his friends who are still working, guilt-tripping them for not spending more time with him. He accuses them of abandoning him and not valuing their friendship despite their efforts to maintain contact. This guilt-tripping behavior pushes his friends away, and they feel unfairly judged and pressured to prioritize his needs over their own responsibilities. This is not empathy. This isn't even sympathy. This is selfishness. This is a lack of identity. This is a lack of purpose. This is a lack of preparing. So what this bitter retiree is doing is putting all the responsibility for his misery on his friends. It's a great way not to have friends. So what's the solution? The retired individual could or should recognize that his friends have their own lives and responsibilities. Instead of guilt-tripping, he could focus on expanding his social circle and finding new opportunities for companionship. By the way, he could also join in the fan club of his friends. Find out what's going on at their work. How's it going? How's it going with the wife, with the children, etc.? There's no restriction to this person reaching out and being in the service of his friends. You could also join retirement communities, participating in group activities, or pursuing shared interests that help him build new relationships instead of totally relying in a codependent methodology on his working friends. By embracing change and adapting to his new circumstances, which is his choice most likely, he can maintain healthier relationships with his existing friends, but also find fulfillment with new ones. All right, number 5. And this is our last example. The envious grandparent. A retired grandmother guilt trips her adult children for spending more time with their in-laws than with her. She constantly compares the attention and care given to the other grandparents, making her children feel guilty for not prioritizing her. This envy-driven guilt tripping creates a lot of tension and a lot of discomfort within the entire family, causing the children and grandchildren eventually to dread family gatherings and limit their interactions with the grandmother. Now, this could be the grandfather too. So what's the solution? Well, let's just use the grandmother. She could perhaps recognize that her children have the right to nurture other relationships and with both sides of the family. Instead of comparing and guilt tripping, she could focus on creating quality time. In other words, why would someone want to visit you? Make it worth their time. So make it worth the time of the grandchildren and the children to be together. Be interested in them, which we're going to talk about in just a second. She could express her love and appreciation without judgment, without envy. She could learn more about the other people, the in-laws. She could learn what makes them tick, what are their fun things that they like to do. And she could foster a more positive and enjoyable relationship with her own family. Encouraging open communication and flexibility in the family dynamics is going to reduce the tension and promote a more harmonious family environment. These examples, and by the way, I kind of smirk a little bit when I'm doing them because I've had clients in every single one of those scenarios. Every one of these scenarios erodes trust. It breeds resentment and damages relationships. We've used the word collusion before. Collusion is when you engage in a behavior or activity that gets you exactly what you don't want. Every one of these examples, the envious grandparent, the bitter retiree, the martyr parent, the manipulative grandfather, and the persistent widow, every one of those is collusionary. In each of the scenarios, the key to overcoming guilt tripping is to focus on building healthy, respectful relationships. And notice the same thing over again, based on open communication, empathy, and understanding. And remember, the definition of empathy is to understand what they're going through their eyes, from their perspective, without any personal bias at all. Too many times we as parents and grandparents want to allegedly empathize by relating, but they're two different things. Relating is telling them what you're going through, and they don't care. Empathy is finding out what they're going through without your personal bias or your immaculate perception. So I'm going to take these solution-based perspectives into something that I wrote about in a book. So let me introduce you to two fascinating characters from a book I wrote called Listen and Lead, The Micro Skills of a Leader. Meet Ted and Ting. Ted embodies the essence of being interested in others. He's the kind of person who asks questions with genuine curiosity and a desire to listen and comprehend. In other words, empathy. On the other side, the flip side, we have Ting, who approaches all conversations with the intent to respond. Tings are always interesting, often steering discussions towards their favorite topic themselves. Now imagine a Ting jam, where a group of Tings gather, each vying for attention, sharing opinions, indulging in sarcasm, relating, or engaging in gossip. Tings thrive on seeking attention, approval, affirmation, and affection from others. Is this not what we're doing when we're guilt leveraging our loved ones? We're Tings. It's all about us. Nothing about it is about them. What about little Sally's 8th grade choir? What about little Randy in his Little League games? That's the conversations you want to have with them. Instead of guilt leveraging to come more often, make it worthwhile. This self-centered approach, being a Ting, will lead to challenges in building trust and respect in conversations with everybody. Not just your loved ones, but your alleged friends as well. So in contrast, Ted brings a refreshing dynamic to the conversation. By asking neutral questions and genuinely listening to the responses, Ted fosters organization, direction, and a sense of safety within the group. Any group. The best leader in any group is someone who starts asking neutral questions. Just a quick story. I've been in many business settings before, and when I did my doctorate work, we had to get together in cohorts at different residencies around the nation. And it was very interesting for me to model this behavior in the following. We'd sit at a table, a round table, and there'd be 6 to 10 of us around the table, depending on the event. And we'd be given an assignment. So they'd explain it verbally, then they'd put sheets of paper in the middle of the table, and they'd say, okay, now, you guys as a group, you solve this problem, and then you'll have a spokesperson report back. Well, what I typically have done in the past is I get to a said table, and you're usually there for half an hour before you're asked to do anything. And I just pay attention to those who are doing most of the talking. So I'm looking for Teds and I'm looking for Tings. No judgment. Okay, that person's a Ting. Well, that one's a Ting pin. That one really likes to talk. And as soon as the assignment is given, I'm the first one to say anything, not with an idea of what we should do, but I look right at the Ting pin, the one who has the most oral diarrhea, and I simply say, what do you think we should do? And then all of a sudden, it brings everyone, because I just point my finger, not in an accusatory way, but what do you think we should do? The minute I ask that question, the entire table focuses first on me talking, because they're surprised that someone comes out of the chute so quickly, and secondly, on the one who's been talking the whole time. Then, as soon as they say something, I don't let them go for long. I'll go to the next Ting pin, and I say, well, what do you think? In that moment, what they realize is that there's a sequence, and everybody's going to get their turn to talk. Well, who do you think is going to be appointed the leader when we have to explain it to the whole group? Yeah, I get to explain everything, and at no time did I ever give my opinion. But what I try to do is to listen so I can synthesize what everyone's saying, and when it's a great idea, I call out the person by name. Yeah, so-and-so said this, and so-and-so said that, and then we thought together as a group about this. And if it's something really smart that I've come up with, I'll say, the group did this. In other words, a true TED is a leader who knows how to bring other people in by allowing them to feel wanted and needed and listened to. So a TED's confidence lies in their ability to converse with anyone on any topic while embracing any different kind of viewpoint. They're very dynamic in conversations because they're neutral, and they don't listen to respond. They listen to understand. They also don't seek validation from the crowd or from anyone in it. The challenge is finding a TED can be like searching for a needle in a haystack. Most people listen with the intent to reply rather than to seek understanding. So you can test this yourself. Observe conversations in a group setting and ask yourself, do people genuinely listen to understand others' perspectives? Or do they mainly talk to ensure others hear them? By embracing the TED mindset, you could literally transform conversations, fostering deeper connections and meaningful interactions. Now imagine having your grandchildren over and being a TED. Just asking them how they're doing. Remember their stories. Remember their friends' names. Remember what they do. What kind of dance are they involved in? What kind of singing or what kind of position do they play? Where are they in the lineup, in the batting order, etc.? Learn about these things. Be interested in what they're trying to do in their life. All right. This brings us to a conclusion of this segment. Thank you so much for listening. We'll have more of these segments where we talk about small social skills or emotional intelligence skills that give you the highest probability you have to start connecting with other people so you discontinue the medicative process. Remember, don't try harder to have a friend. Don't try harder to get your grandchildren to come. Try different. Invite them to be in your presence because they want to be. Until next time, may your habits harmonize with your purpose, leading to a life filled with happiness, joy, and well-being.